I think it came naturally. I didn't really plan it. I set up my first company when I was 25, so I was quite young. In my case, I didn't follow a traditional method. I mean, I didn't go to university. I was actually a racehorse jockey the first time, and I decided to learn to computer program, which was very lucky. And I realized that an opportunity for me to grow would probably be setting up my own business. And I set up my first company when I was 25, and it sort of came very natural. It wasn't really a thing that you don't wake up one morning and say you're an entrepreneur. I think it's more inside of you to just push and test things out and disrupt. When you see, in my case, I love seeing something that's not working well, and with technology you can improve that, right? And I think that generally most of the things I've done have been around finding a problem and solving it through technology. Well, any professional sport requires a lot of discipline. In the case of horse racing, it's a very unique where you have an owner of the horse, you have a trainer, you have people who train the horse, you have the jockey. So it's a team. It's often a team sport as well, which is, although you're individually on the horse. So I think probably discipline and teamwork, and importance of every part of the team as well. Because at the end of the day, the trainer is very famous, and sometimes the jockey is very famous. Not in my case, I wasn't a very good jockey, but actually the person training the horse every day or looking after it is actually super important. So I think it's a lot about, teamwork. So I was very lucky. The first company I set up was sort of a business developer, tech developer. So we were building websites, some e-commerce, hosting, and it was right at the beginning of internet. So it was in the right time at the right time in the right place type thing. So that was successful. My second business was also extremely successful. We set up at the time the largest Spanish-speaking portal in the internet. So it was a bit like a Yahoo in those days. Yahoo doesn't exist so much today, but it was different services, community services like email, chat, search engine, home pages, and it grew incredibly quickly in Spanish-speaking countries, specifically in Latin America, although we launched the company from Spain. I think generally what you feel when things are going well is when there's organic traction. So when consumers or clients start using your services, but you're not necessarily doing the marketing yet, that's when I think that you have something interesting because it's growing organically and virally. And I think the most successful companies I've been involved with have generally grown, initially anyway, by themselves, just organically from word of mouth, and that's hugely powerful, right? I've had so many difficult moments. I think generally it's not perceived because we've had a lot of funding, and we've actually got a high valuation or whatever. But actually, fundraising was really tough. We were a small Spanish startup out of Barcelona. There hadn't been any Spanish big success stories, no unicorns or anything like that. So a lot of investors wondered whether we could compete on a global scale against huge companies like Uber, Delivery Hero, for example, who now we're part of. Deliveroo even, which was a UK-based. So there's big companies out there with a lot of capital, and there's a lot of doubts if we could. So fundraising was probably the toughest thing we've had to do. And I think if we were probably born out of London or Berlin or Amsterdam or obviously Silicon Valley, then I think we'd have a lot easier access to capital. But it was good. It made us lean. It made us do more with less, right? So if you don't have the capital behind you, then you just have to be more agile, be able to change course much quicker, which is good because it makes you a better company in the end. Well, I think Romania as well, where it's positioned geographically, is also an incredible opportunity because we have our regional hub here, right? We have 250 people here, so the business is going well. There's a lot of talent. So I don't think Romania is necessarily not a good place to start. In fact, if you launch a business here with a global mindset, you might in the region have less competitors than maybe in other parts of Europe or certainly other parts of the world. So actually, there is an opportunity to be a first player in a certain segment where you have less competition, which is also an opportunity. So I think, my advice would be, first of all, go for it. You have nothing to lose. I mean, even if your project fails, and most startups fail, you'll learn a lot more in that phase than you would working for somebody else. So you're always going to take positive things out of it. And I know many entrepreneurs who've, maybe their first project didn't work, but they've launched another one or another one after that, and they've been successful. So I think definitely go for it. Focus on very few things. Don't create the perfect company or the perfect product, or the time to market is probably much more important. Well, in fact, it's much more important than perfection. So I'd focus on the key elements of your project that are really differentiator, that's going to get you that growth, that organic growth. Focus on them, do them really well, and later on you can perfect the other things that make it absolutely perfect. So time to market ahead of perfection. Well, I think, keep it simple. Make it sure that an investor understands the problem you're trying to solve, or where you're going. That's very important. Many investors receive a lot of pitches, a lot of decks. They read through them very quickly. So, capture their attention very quickly. Make it understandable. And then, when they meet you, which hopefully they will, be strong in conviction about your beliefs. Great ideas are good, but there's so many out there. It's all about execution. So an investor will end up believing in the team you're building. So surround yourself with good founders, co-founders. Most companies aren't built by one person, they're built by a team. So, I believe thoroughly that a great project requires different skill sets in the founders. Some can be more methodical, some can be more creative, some can be more extrovert, introvert. I think it's great compensate founders with different skill sets so that you can compensate yourself and make it. That would be my advice. Yeah, I think there's a phase where you start, at the beginning you're very tactical. So it's time to market, it's getting out there quickly with a product, not perfect. You launch it, you get traction, then you start building on top of that. And what happens is you get to a point where the business is getting to a size where you actually start thinking about less tactical and more scalable. And I think that's the moment when you start thinking about, if I build this, it's not just for Spain, it's also for Romania. How am I going to build this in a scalable way, the product, that actually I can use the components in different parts. So you start thinking a little bit about how you scale the teams, how you manage the teams as well. So you start not only managing 2 or 3 people, but your department grows, so it's managing people in a more scalable manner. You start putting in processes in, which unfortunately, inevitably slows a little bit down the business. So the playoff is trying to move as quickly and agile as possibly, but in the same putting in scalable processes, scalable technology. And then you move to more senior leadership as well. Maybe finding senior people who've seen this and done that before, who've hit the walls that Glovo's going to hit, and maybe take some learnings out of previous roles. So it's a mixture of bringing a little bit more experience, putting in processes in, and making things scalable. Well, I'm not a very good methodical finance-focused investor, which I should be, I suppose. I actually invest on projects that I find fun and I'd really enjoy being part of it. So they make me, and then secondly, obviously, the founding team. For me, it's key that they inspire me that they're going to be able to do that. But number 2 as well, that they're ethical and they've got a good team vibe, and it's not all about them. It's about the team and the people around them. That's very important. I think generally those companies with strong ethics of how the team and leave no one behind, generally long term are more, triumph more than ones that are just very centric around one or 2 people. So I think it's a lot about, am I going to enjoy being part of this project? I think differentiates yourselves, the companies as they get bigger, they have to focus on less things, and I think there's opportunities around segments that are growing very quickly, like on-demand delivery or quick commerce, which is also we're very focused on. I think there's opportunities where you can focus on something that differentiates you from the bigger players, and allows you to initially create your niche your niche space in the market, that maybe a smaller group of consumers would like, but actually in the end you can grow on top of that, and that's when you grow into and then start competing. And I think there's in tech, there's so many, spaces, technologies, products that are moving very quickly. No, not just on demand and not just e-commerce, but video conferencing and how we interact. And these are fast growing segments because they're growing by themselves. Consumers are changing their habits through technology, and I think there's space for smaller players to differentiate themselves against apparently much bigger ones, but do it much better, much quicker, much more agile, much more listening to the consumer. So I think that's what I would focus on. We've had a few mistakes, but they've been really good for us as a business because we've learned from them. One of the most expensive was launching. We launched in Latin America. We've since sold the business in Latin America. We got a good return on investment from that, and we decided it made a lot more sense as a business to focus on this side of the Atlantic and this region, actually, where we are today, than not diversifying ourselves so much. So we had and we launched the biggest market in Latin America is Brazil, and we launched there very quickly, and we hired a lot of people, and we launched in a lot of cities, literally within months, which we'd never done previously. We normally launch in the capital city or the most demographic city, and then we'll learn the local. Every region, every city is very different. We learn from that, and then we'll start rolling out in other cities, which is how we launched Romania. We launched in Bucharest, started getting the traction. We know we've got something. The teams really understands the playbook, and then we start launching the other cities, and now we're in 60. Because in Brazil, we launched very quickly and just making a lot of money. And we realized pretty much after 4 or 5 months that, first of all, it was very difficult to compete with local competitors who were doing a very good job. It's another thing as well. There was a local competitor who had 95% market share, and they were doing an incredible job from a UX perspective. They had all the best partners. The delivery times were good, so the customer experience was excellent. So us coming in there really didn't have much to add on top, and we spent a lot of money very quickly, and we quickly made a decision. Look, this isn't working. Let's stop, which is difficult because you've got a team. You have to release the team. You have to realize you made a mistake. You have to tell your investors. You have just spent a lot of millions of euros. But we learned very quickly that that wasn't the way to enter a market, and we didn't do it again. So that investment in the end probably maybe long term saved us money. I think focus on a few things, do them really well. Don't try and do too many things, and don't do any of them well. So I'd focus on the key elements of what you're trying to do and do those really well. No? In our case, it was the customer experience and the speed of delivery and making sure they had a really good experience. And when they didn't, for whatever reason, maybe the restaurant was closed or they didn't have the products, or then we could give them a good experience so they would come back the next day. I think that's what we focused on. So I think that surround yourself with good team. You don't do anything alone. I think that's and also complementary, diverse team, different people, different ways of thinking. Smart people, but diverse. I think is key. Those would probably be the two things. I think and I mentioned it earlier. Time to market. Get out an MVP, test it, learn from it, see what's working, what isn't. Then you can adjust it and not build this long development phase that you take 8-9 months to get your product out there. Build something quick, learn from it. You're going to learn a lot from even a bad product that needs improvement. You're going to pick up on things. So those are probably the three. Yeah, I honestly think that there's this big gap, or it's not gap, but they've been left behind, and Glovo's doing this partially, right? Which is we're helping retailers digitalize themselves. So today, primarily through our app, we give them a turnkey solution where we bring in the customers, they come to our app, so we're sort of a marketing tool for them. We bring the storefront in our app and through our web, and where they can sell, they can upload the products, the prices, and then we'll give them a turnkey solution. When a customer orders, we'll go and pick it up, we'll deliver it, and everything fantastic. But I think retailers, and we're helping digitalize that, but until now, they really haven't been in this space, right? And you have all these companies, startups, scale-ups, e-commerce, large chains adapting their business to be digital, and they're moving now into 20, 30, 40% of their revenues are digital. And I think local commerce has been left behind a little bit. And I think there's an opportunity, and the reason I say it's an opportunity because when internet started, it was fine ordering something online and you receive it 3 weeks later. And then a decade later, it's the same week. And now it's 24 hours, 48 hours, sometimes still the same week. But people are going to want it now, a lot of things. Not all the time, but they'll want it now, like immediately. And that's going to be a big growth sector. And you can see that companies like Amazon, who've spent years getting products and taking them miles and miles away from the consumer and then shipping them back to them. And now they're moving much closer to the cities. They're moving their storage much closer to the consumer. They're buying retail businesses. So there's an opportunity, I think, for digitalization of retail, which is going to be huge. And the rationale is they're so close to the consumer. So today they're the only ones who can deliver immediately. And I think they have a window of opportunity of a few years because the big e-commerce companies are going to come to the cities. So I think there's going to be a lot of tools and technology around that helps them do it. Glovo's building a few of those, but there's going to be spaces for other entrepreneurs to build stuff that really help these digital companies. And I'll give you an example. Imagine a retailer who could tomorrow have a tool set that he could upload his products, all his products in his store on the high street, and all of a sudden he'd be selling everywhere. But in Glovo, of course, but also in Amazon, in eBay, in Google, so you name it, Shopify. So they can sell pretty much at the touch of a button, and they become an e-commerce, right? So when you're looking for a charger, and actually you find one that's going to be delivered in 30 minutes. You can find the same charger probably in the US, and it'll take a week to arrive. So maybe you want it right now, maybe you need it right now. And you won't necessarily find that just in Glovo. You'll find that in Google, you'll find that in Amazon. So I think there's an interesting opportunity for retailers to really digitalize themselves, and I think it's going to be a massive one. And also, the great thing about it is society is interested in that local commerce. Consumers feel friendly towards local commerce. They're not this distant company. Public administration, regulators, government want that to work. So I think it's going to be a big tendency of the next decade.